Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the third session of our August Advisor Ambassador Program. My name is Zach Hewells, and I work in the Marketing and Communications Department at NAFA National. Today's speaker is Brian Haney. Brian is a member of NAFA Greater Washington, D.C. He's very involved in the state and national level. Brian is the holder of many awards in the industry, but most recently he was named in Washington Business Journal's 40 Under 40 for 2019. And Brian will be presenting a new topic for us today, and that's being a digital ninja, mastering your brand to maximize your growth. If you have any questions during the presentation, feel free to type them into the chat feature of Zoom, or at the end of the program, you can unmute yourself and even share your video if you'd like, and ask the question directly to Brian. But without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to him. How's it going, Brian?
Thank you, my friend. Good, great, wonderful. All right, this is going to be fun because this topic is kind of near and dear to my heart. So hopefully everybody can see the screen. And really, you know, outside of just the fun with the title, branding and marketing are two massively important elements for any financial practice. So what I'm going to try to do is cover both at a very, very high level what this can look like, and also try to be very specific, because I recognize that, you know, the great thing about NAFA, and Zach and I were even just talking about this before we kicked off, is that we have so many different members that come from a variety of different types of practices. So, you know, maybe you run a State Farm office, or maybe you work with, you know, a big life agency like Northwestern Mutual, New York Life, Mass Mutual, what have you, or maybe you're independent or somewhere in between. So I'm going to make sure that while I cover things at a very high level, that we're going to dive into some very specific things that can be applicable regardless of where you are, even if in, you know, a large market, small market, doesn't matter. So we're going to have a lot of fun. So let's get going by actually advancing a slide. Before I even say anything though, is there anything that the audience out there would like me to cover when it comes to this topic? Anything at all? Any burning questions? Any bright ideas like these two people? All right, good. Everybody's awake. All right, then this is what I'm going to go through. I'll talk very briefly about myself, and then we're just going to dive right into really branding, what it is as a concept, and some very specific cool ninja stuff later on. So let's keep the party rolling. So all about BDizzle. Hopefully you'll have run into me at least at one point at P+P, for those of you who have attended. And if you're kind of new to NAFA, P+P, or Performance Plus Purpose, is the annual conference that we have coming up in literally less than 25 days in Orlando this year. Something that I'll circle back on. I am a native Washingtonian, which literally means somebody who was born in the physical proximity of Washington, D.C., our nation's capital. There are very few actual native Washingtonians, because D.C. is a hugely transient city where most of the population actually comes from somewhere else. So very proud of that fact, and I appreciate Zach mentioning the 40 Under 40 as a native of the area. That was just incredibly humbling and rewarding. I've been in the business for a while and have kind of run the gambit, so I have a pretty diverse background of experience, banking, private wealth, independent, PNC, multi-lines, the whole 9 yards. I love sports, both as an enthusiast and also as a avid lacrosse player. I still play. I try to play golf, sometimes well, other times not. And easily the biggest milestone in life I've accomplished thus far is staying married to the same woman for 15 years, which, by the way, is the absolute certification that I'm a good salesperson. If you see in some of the other slides a picture of my wife, you'll know why. And I also recently launched a podcast, actually back in June. I've had 8 or 9 episodes out. The That's My Financial Guy podcast, which has been a lot of fun, and I'll get to that a little bit later. More cool ninja stuff. you'll see the top left picture actually is the family company. So it's my dad and my brother and I at one of the conferences that we are vendors at. Our largest market in a practice sense is the association marketplace. So organizations like NAFA. And as you see in my wife on the right, she's just amazing, and our daughter is also amazing. So let's keep on moving. How do you become a digital ninja? Or in another sense, what in the heck is that all about? This is really, the concept of a brand is something that I actually learned from one of my oldest clients who ran a company called Ripe. Which, by the way, you can look up their website. It's ripe.com. They were a branding company that did, marketing, web design. And so spending the last 15 years just kind of listening to them and understanding what it is about what they did that helped deliver a particular look and feel to a company across, the landscape of whether it's an industry, whether it's a market. All they did was put out, your imprint into the marketplace in a manner that was effective, communicated your value, and then also solicited customers. But the concept of ethos that's the word that I kind of want to take some time with here. It's when we think about how can we market ourselves, especially digitally, and I'll get to some really important things to understand in some later slides, but when you think of this concept of an ethos, it is exactly what that slide says. It's the reason why somebody's going to want to engage with you in the first place. And it is the intersection of not just what it is that you do that's of value, but why you do it. And in the kind of technological digital era that we're living in, your ethos is probably the most important thing that you can quantify and kind of now make as part of your brand element. And this is true whether you run an independent practice with your own name, like our company is the Haney Company, or whether you work for State Farm, Mass Mutual, where you have some sort of a national company that has its own brand that you're also taking advantage of, but still trying to figure out how you leverage a national brand into your own individual setting. It all kind of comes together. Always remember this. Your brand essentially is you. As financial practitioners, people don't buy our stuff, they buy us. And so really the questions that our team did about 3 or 4 years ago that have been extremely beneficial for kind of our brand across the digital era was we had to ask ourselves questions that probably the average advisor and professional have really never asked. What are we all about? What is it that we love about our business, and really what our business allows us to do in life? Because for myself, for our company, we do what we do because it allows us to do other things that we enjoy better than just being financial practitioners. And that's probably something that might be a kindred concept for several of you. And so getting more in touch to the why actually caused us to answer some very critical brand questions. And I'm going to kind of get into even the elements that this had an impact on. But hopefully this concept of brand, this concept of ethos, really it's all about the what and the why and the convergence, the synergy of those two things. And then how are we going to take that into a digital world? Parts of how you can brand yourself. Words that come to mind here is reputation, subject matter expertise, and frankly, being a part of a community or a market where you become a known commodity, right? So for our practice, the Haney Company, we operate probably 85% of our business in the association marketplace. And in the association market, we are the gold standard as it comes to financial services and really insurance, retirement plans, you name it. And that's something that my father, who is the co-founder and president of our company, that's a market he's developed relationships in for 40 years. So we have a lot of relational equity and history there. But, for anybody under the age, frankly, of 40, 35, it's a transitional period that we're standing in right now, because really, relationships with an older generation don't necessarily translate the same way as they will to the next generation, millennials to Gen X and Gen Y. So when you talk about how do you want to brand yourself, it has to start with understanding that you deliver value and knowing what that is. And some of the best ways you can figure out actually what is valuable, or what maybe the market perceives as valuable, is to ask some of your best clients or the target markets that you're trying to build a practice in. What are some of the most important things that they want from somebody in your situation? What would they need help with, or what would they perceive as valuable? Okay, if you don't already know that already, that's the great way to get an answer, right? In terms of how do you want to sell yourself? Best way to figure that out, ask the market you're trying to sell into, and they'll tell you. Okay, but know that you have value, and now you're going to try to communicate that value digitally, as well as in interpersonal relationships that are happening, through a computer potentially, or online. Other ways that really help elevate your brand and your value quickly and digitally is to connect people together. So instead of just coming into, and having a LinkedIn page or Facebook or what have you, and always trying to get people to connect to you, find ways to actually bridge gaps for the people in your spheres of influence, either for clients, or if you're just trying to build across a marketplace. Let's say somebody you'd love to do business with is really looking for a great attorney, right? Because we all know CPAs and attorneys and all that kind of stuff. Be the person that brings those two people together. And it doesn't have to be, something that even connects through our professional sphere. People are always asking for recommendations. If you become somebody that's always trying to just be a connector, solve things, and put people together, that actually has a lot of weight, and maybe goes further than you might think it does. Being a part of a cause, again, that goes back to kind of the ethos question that I said, why do we do what we do? Because there's a lot of things that we consider to be important professionally. Maybe it's supporting a local shelter, or maybe it's supporting, education, whatever it is. If there are things that are important, that are community things that have nothing to do with what you do professionally, those are also things that you want to make sure become part of your brand identity, because it is important for the people that you're going to be approaching that they know that that's important to you. And it may be a great way to develop relationships, because when people come together because they believe in a cause, they're also going to be naturally more affectionate towards one another from a professional standpoint. When you deliver expertise and advice in a digital medium, that's a powerful thing to be able to do. And so as I get into kind of practical tactics, being able to deliver your expertise, share value, share information, share advice, obviously in a compliance-friendly way, that helps elevate your brand, makes you more of a subject matter expert. And then in just, the non-digital sense, you want to start to get on committees and connect in community settings, whether it's with the Chamber of Commerce, the board of a nonprofit. It's important that you become a person that serves, because service is a great brand value add, because people don't just see you as a professional trying to serve themselves, but they see you as somebody that's connected to a broader community and trying to elevate the community at the same time. And the bottom line is you need to find ways to differentiate yourself. It may be easier, the perspective is that it could be easier if you have an independent practice, because then you kind of control most of the brand messaging. And that's true to a certain extent, but it's still easy even if you work for a company like a State Farm or a Mass Mutual, where there's a massive national campaign that brands the company. You can still differentiate yourself where you are. And the digital mediums that we're going to get into is the best way to do that quickly, easily, and effectively. When you think about your brand elements, it's really important, and this goes back to what I mentioned before. When we went through this kind of process as a company, branding and what our marketing plan is going to look like, we started to ask ourselves a ton of questions that I had frankly not really asked myself ever as a professional, maybe to some degree. You know, what kind of colors are going to resonate with the kind of value proposition that I say? Probably that's something that none of us have ever thought about. And you'll see on this slide that, you know, psychologists and, you know, behavioral economics and, you know, people in academia have studied, and there are emotional reactions and responses that are tied into every kind of different color. And so that's important for you to be aware of. Frankly, you know, a lot of communication is nonverbal. We are actually more visual learners than we are auditory or through, you know, writing and other forms. So when you're able to recognize that even the things that you wear, even the you know, the things that you present with, whether it's a brochure or the colors that you might see online, every aspect of that brand can have value, significance, and purpose. And so these are things that you do want to be considering as you're talking about brand. You know, what kind of colors tie in with your value proposition? And, you know what that is. And I'm happy to, at the end of this presentation, send out some information about these kind of color motions. You can Google this stuff. A lot of this stuff's just very easily accessible online. Your bios. So, you know, a bio is usually kind of this, here's what I'm about and why I'm great. That's the typical bio. And yet, that's not really necessarily the best way to develop a digital presence, because people don't necessarily care as much about you, but they really do care about how you fit into their world. So one suggestion I'm going to put out to everybody on this call is figure out how to rewrite your bio in one of two ways. Either start to tell a little bit of a story about yourself. For example, I have a little kind of a funny bio that I just talk about, hey, you know, the funny conversations that I have when I try to tell people what I do. So it's a very conversational type of biography, and it really actually doesn't talk a whole lot about me professionally, except in more relatable terms, almost like I'm having a conversation. Or write your bio as if it's something that, you know, one of your customers or clients might be considering, right? So write a bio from the audience's perspective, not your own. And what this can look like is, you know, if your value proposition is to say, for example, you know, come in and, you know, help somebody save money by, you know, properly diagnosing some, you know, type of P&C policy or employee benefits, or, you know, bringing value by protecting families because, you know, they need to be protected, whatever that looks like. Rewrite the bio in that type of a language rather than just, hey, I was born here, I've done this, I have all these credentials, I've won some awards, I'm great. So think about that for a second. Your website, again, if you happen to have your own, or even if you're, you know, part of a larger, you know, market determined website, if you don't have as much control over that, you still want to be thinking about the messaging over the elements that you do have control over. And obviously, digitally, we have a lot of control over the social media components. And I'm going to get into probably a lot of that very specifically soon. Think about every printed material. You know, what you use and what you leave behind will still talk about your brand. And so don't just think for a second about, you know, especially if you run an independent practice, and let's say you're representing a lot of different companies, you want to be thinking about the things that you take from them and use when you're interacting with clients, because showing people less can still say more, but you can lose an audience, or you may lose components of your brand if you're putting too much of some other company's value proposition in front of people and somehow unintentionally diluting your own. Think about your voicemail. You know, if somebody calls you up, you know, maybe you do have certain things that you have to say from a compliance standpoint, but maybe the rest of it can be fun. Hey, sorry you missed us. I can't believe that's happened. Normally, we're always in the office, except when we're out playing golf or hanging out with friends across the street. Whatever that looks like, but, try to have a little bit more fun. I think, choose elements of your brand that can become more personal because frankly, again, it goes back to that point. People aren't buying what you do, they're buying you. So the more personal you can make it, the better. Your attire. IBM banned the tie back in the mid to late 90s. That's not to suggest, maybe some of us don't even, I'm not wearing a tie obviously right now. But what you do in terms of the markets that you're trying to go into, you want to have some thoughtful consideration about what that looks like and, dress not necessarily to impress clients, but to meet them on a level where you're not gonna come across a way that you think you might, but you're unintentionally coming across differently. This point is the most critical when it comes to a brand. Carrying your brand through every medium, and that's why this previous slide is so powerful. Consistency. Nothing will hurt your digital or any component of your brand element more than if it's disjointed. If you're saying one thing to a client in a meeting and you have one type of materials or printed brochures, etc., and yet your website looks different and says something else, and maybe your bio says something else, and you'd be surprised at how many high-level people in our industry that have been doing this for a long time don't consider that. In fact, most businesses, this is why the client that I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation has a lot of business, because they make it a point at every client engagement to talk about the fundamentally important principle of carrying a brand across all mediums. Color, communication, print, attire, web, it all needs to be uniform, because the points at which it's not, maybe consciously people might be able to move on beyond that, but on a subconscious level, you're actually undermining your value proposition because there's disparities between what you're communicating. When things are inconsistent, we tend to want to push away rather than engage more. So that's a hugely important component to this. All right, ninja time. This quote is huge. We do not have a choice to digitally transform. We have to choose how well we do it. So in case you just woke up yesterday, we're in a digital age, and we're not rolling that back. It's not going backwards. We're not going to go back to kind of paper, pen, and carrier pigeons. So it's here and it's here to stay. We now have to figure out, well, what are we going to do? How are we going to be effective? If 93% of buying decisions today are influenced by social media, that means that's either a massive opportunity for us to take advantage of, or something that maybe we need to do a little bit corrective action in. But it's not a space that we can ignore or not try to take some level of control over. The concept of socialnomics, all right? We always talk about what's the best way to get new business, hopefully through referrals, and what's the best way to get referrals? The answer to that question is be referable, not ask. So if your practice is so significant that you're giving out an experience, a brand experience, and a relational experience that's exceptional, people will not be silent about it. You go to a good restaurant and you have an amazing meal, you don't just have that experience yourself, you tell somebody about it. So you can develop the same type of influence and impact as a practitioner, and then take advantage of what those experiences can do for you on a digital basis, because if you have good presence, you'll permit your clients to now become your best marketers for you. And that's the power of being a digital ninja, is finding ways to, in no time at all, through a share or a post or a like or what have you, all of a sudden your marketing team just double, triple, quadruple. All right, that's the power. Digital stamp, that's kind of the totality of our brand and our presence online. And it has two elements: the digital footprint, which I'm going to get to in a second, and the digital shadow. The footprint is the part that we get to control. The shadow is the part that we don't have as much control over, because it's what other people say about us online, but it is something that we can have massive influence on, and we do want to impact for our benefit. So this is what the digital footprint looks like. If you're on Facebook, first of all, what is that like? Do you use that for business? I hear people from a lot of different scenarios say they do want to do it, they don't want to do it. I think my kind of bottom line suggestion is you got to find a way to do it. Maybe it's not as significant as other things, but you can't avoid taking advantage of it. Now, that doesn't mean every personal profile has to now become professional, and it certainly doesn't mean that you become a serial poster in your personal space about business things and all that. You want to figure out what's your ethos, what makes sense, what represents you well to people you have a relationship with, but then now you want to find a strategic way to make this a little bit more professionally meaningful. And really not necessarily always thinking that the net result that what you're going for, especially online, it may not be more people coming in and becoming your clients. Maybe the best thing you can do for yourself through digital medium is actually become an expert, so that way people find you, or if you're engaging with a client and they go back away from the meeting and they search for you online, they see you in a way that's like, oh my gosh, I have to do business with this person because look at all of what they're able to accomplish, and look at what all these people say about them, etc. Within Facebook, and Facebook's not alone in this, now we have so many subcategories. So now more than ever before, it's so easy to online drill very, very strategically into a market, become very niche, because there is a community for everything, and there's a sub-community for every community. So, what digital has given us is the tools to be extremely strategic. And you want to take advantage of that. You want to be in certain communities to make yourself known. So the pages, the groups, certainly if you have a practice or you have the ability to put out, a professional page through social media, you want to do that. And then you want to make sure that there's enough content. And I'm going to get to that in a little bit later. Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, social ads. It's, by the way, very inexpensive to put out Facebook ads. Usually what a lot of that is just maybe you have a practice post that you want to kind of highlight, so you can kind of advertise that through Facebook very inexpensively on $12 or $36 or whatever. So you can do a lot with a little, and some things you don't have to spend any money on, but you have a lot of opportunities, again, to develop a digital presence that costs you very little, and not just money, time as well, if you're really smart about it. LinkedIn, that's your white pages today, right? So if you're not on LinkedIn, if you don't have a professional bio there, you absolutely have to. And even just having a bio doesn't do it. You're going to need to make sure that you manage and manicure the content for your LinkedIn profile. And I'll get into, I know there may be some people here that have certain services that kind of help auto post. We'll talk about that a little bit later, because while those are very helpful and necessary, you still need to know, how to maximize and use those. Twitter as well. Again, all of these are opportunities. You don't have to do them all, but you do want to figure out which ones are going to make the most sense and what's going to be the best way to advance your brand. And frankly, before you even try to make the decision for yourself, you may want to know your target audience. What are they on? What do they do? How do they consume information? That might answer the question better for you. If the people that you're trying to reach are on Twitter, then you may need to get on Twitter. That might seem scary, but it's about making sure that you're going to become this kind of gold standard in a certain community. So you can't avoid being in the places where your community is already engaging in conversation and communication. Bottom line is, it's about content. Ninjas need tools. So you have to master and manage content. So what are all the ways that we put out content, right? Quotes, likes, links, videos. But now it's not just about frequency of content. It's all about quality over quantity. So everything needs to be very thoughtful and also very intentional. So one of the things that I encourage people to do is to develop a marketing calendar specific to social media, because you want to have a predictable way to engage online, and also to make sure that you're doing it with a healthy rhythm. You don't want to kind of do it ad hoc, or, hey, I remembered I haven't been on LinkedIn in 3 weeks, so I'm going to go in and check in and like and do all this other stuff. Because frankly, people will tell that. I mean, it's actually very easy to see how engaged or disengaged you actually are online, because that's what the internet shows us. They show how active or how inactive you are. And like I mentioned before, quality over quantity. When you're talking about maybe using certain services that can auto post things on your behalf, that can help with the quantity, can also help with the timeliness. But you really want to make sure that that stuff adds value and lines up with your brand and your value proposition. Because you can also tell online if stuff's being auto posted and it's just kind of generic or flat. And I see that. There's plenty of people in our industry, not in our industry, that you can tell they're just having a service post things. They're not really engaged with it, and it's not really doing anything for them. So you want to be mindful of it. It does need to be a value enhancer, not a value detractor. Blogs are a great opportunity, and not something that every compliance department is thrilled about, but maybe you're in part of the financial space where you have a little bit more flexibility and you might like to write or produce content. Not everything, by the way, that you produce has to be done in-house or by you. You can create great digital relationships by partnering. Maybe you intentionally form some relationships with bloggers or podcasters or what have you, and you just, they interview you on a regular basis, or you help co-author content or stuff like that. There's a lot of ways that you can do it where it doesn't all have to be done yourself. So you want to think about that. Video is extremely powerful as well. And like I mentioned earlier, we are visual learners. So any way that you can add a visual element to messaging is going to add tremendous value, resonance. It's going to hit people at a different level psychologically. It's going to be really important. Bottom line is, know how to tag, use hashtags, use @, because social media is all about using all of those tools and then creating all the searchability, which also ties back into things like SEO and backlinks and a bunch of digital language that hopefully some of that will make sense to you. But it's important, when you post, especially if it's going to be tied into your brand and professional, you're going to have to do these. You have to tag people appropriately that broadcast your message further. You may use hashtags. In fact, when I started my podcast, before I even did it, I had to kind of create my own hashtag and get it, out there a certain number of times in case anybody came back and tried to poke at, the brand name and the naming, and even though I bought my own domain for it. So a lot of ways that you can take advantage of that, or use a hashtag that's already widely utilized and now you're just tying into a broader community. Very important point. Integrity and reputation are now the same thing. In a digital world, they are essentially identical. So that's why it's really important to, before you kind of go out online and take a buckshot, scattershot approach, or maybe you've already done that. Maybe you haven't been as thoughtful or as mindful or as strategic as you'd like to have been, and hopefully this presentation kind of allows you to turn the page and start over. But the reputation that you develop online is what people will see you as, and it's very, very hard to unpack that. And so you want to be very thoughtful before you hit post, like, or send, or reply, or what have you. Take an extra second and think about everything. But also recognize that there is a very valuable and necessary way that you can build good integrity and develop a healthy reputation taking advantage of a digital medium. It's just, I've published 12 articles in the last 6 months. Now, I have a BA in journalism, so I have affinity for writing, and I've made space in my practice life to be able to do that. But I've been able to produce those 12 articles because I've been able to develop good relationships with publications and editors and writers. And so part of how you can do this is maybe, like I mentioned before, you're looking to form good partnerships. you can form partnerships online, not just in a professional sense, but in a digital one. And that's going to be really important and critical. So what steps do you want to take? All right. You want to become a ninja. You want to look as cool as that guy right there with the sword. Audit thyself. Audit thyself. Audit thyself. I say it 3 times because I cannot emphasize how important it is. Take a look at the way that you look now before you even decide what you want to do differently. Google yourself, pull up all your profiles, personal, professional, just you need to take a look. You need to, make sure you don't have any pictures from college that you're kind of like, maybe that doesn't, represent me in the best light professionally today. Because look, once it's out there, right? So better just to know. And then if you need to take some things down, remove, etc. But, before you decide where you're going to go, take a healthy look and see what you look like now. And be thoughtful as you're having this ethos and brand conversation. Now you've audited yourself so you see where you are, and you've taken the time to have a brand development conversation with yourself about what you want to say, what you want to do, how you want to look. That you'll be able to piece this together very well and strategically to go forward and have a different, better, more impactful, more meaningful brand online. If you're not attending NAFA's P+P conference in Orlando, you're crazy. I'm sorry. It's an amazing time where myself and many others like me that are wildly more successful are all going to be there, and they are there not to be your competitors. They're there to be your comrades, to freely give their time, energy, and information to support you. And the ideas, the sales tips, et cetera, is second to none. So certainly would encourage you to do that. If you're not already going, you got to. Joining NAFA is also a simple thing that I would encourage you to do if you're not already a member, because NAFA has a lot of tools that their membership can provide you. Technology white papers, there's the Real Wealth Client Cast, there's a lot of stuff that the membership can provide to you that you can use and equip yourself to develop a better and healthier reputation. Back to kind of, there may be folks in different walks. So maybe you're a state farmer, or maybe you're an independent, or maybe you're a P&C shop, maybe you're wealth management. However you come to the table today, look at the companies that support your practice. And after you've figured out what your personal and your practice brand's going to be, now it's going to be a lot easier to go back to those companies and pull things off of their marketing shelves to support your brand, right? So now you're not just counting on, the State Farm annual videos or what have you, or Fidelity's, this, that, whatever it is. I mean, every major national carrier and company that we work with has a whole clown car of great marketing resources. But instead of just kind of going in and doing general searches, when you have your own brand value prop, you're only going to be looking for those things that will come in and connect to your value, be an enhancement of it, and hopefully things that you can personalize, right? Because that's the key. You can't personalize everything, but there are things that you'll be able to personalize, and so that's what you want to do to better equip yourself. And certainly reach out within the NAFA community or even beyond that. There's a lot of people in the financial business that are looking to help, looking to share ideas. I've interviewed NAFA members on my own podcast, and so there may be people in your community that are doing cool things. And if you decide you want to start your own podcast, I'm happy to tell you what my journey was like there. But there's a lot of ways that you can, like I said, partner, go, grow. So reach out. You've got a lot of opportunities at your fingertips. That's all, folks. Who has 2 thumbs and loves being a digital ninja? This guy. I'm going to open it up for any questions. We got plenty of time. Don't everybody ask questions at once, though.
Thank you, Brian, for your time and your presentation. I appreciate it.
Not a problem.
So while we're holding for questions, I thought I'd let everybody know if the idea of the NAFA Performance Plus Purpose the conference did intrigue you, feel free to reach out to us. I believe we have a special deal going for non-members of NAFA. And so if it's something that you think you might be interested in attending in Orlando, then yeah, reach out to me at recruitment@nafa.org, and we may be able to do something about the registration costs.
Come on, there's got to be at least one question though. One freebie. What you want me to tell you what the best thing to do on LinkedIn is? One strategy. Come on.
I want to know. Oh, here it is. So we do have a question. What's better, print or videos to get your point across via Instagram?
You mean pictures or videos?
Yeah.
Yeah. So two-part answer. Great question, by the way. I like both. Here's the thing about videos. The average video that I see done is, let's just say, marginal quality at best. And no, you're not gonna, none of us are really gonna go out and become professional videographers. However, like I said, it's quality rather than quantity. So I think I prefer pictures because there's a lot of ways that I can edit a picture and use Instagram and filtering and all the other stuff to make a picture look really good, and then be able to still tell a story in a post that has impact. But you know, any little thing that can happen in a video that doesn't look great, probably, you know, I just think there's maybe more risk with video. However, you know, it's good to try to have both. So I think the best thing to do is, you know, there's a lot of, frankly, video apps and ways that you can, if you're going to take a video, make it so that it seems pretty good quality, and have fun with it too, because people do like seeing them. The last point that I'll make, you know, I see so many like, you know, hey, I just turned my cell phone around and I'm going to talk to you at the gym, or in my dash cam with my car and all that other stuff. I mean, it's really tough to stomach some of that. Even my friends, people that I know, like and care about, those types of videos seem so campy to me. And so I'm not going to discourage you from doing that if you feel that that's valuable to you. However, like I said, I think that has kind of those subconsciously undermining your value prop, because it just seems very thrown together. And so, you know, I am supremely conscious with everything that I put out, and maybe, you know, almost to a fault, but I think it's better to be further down that spectrum, because again, you can control this message, but once it's out there, it's out there. Right? Even if you take it back down, once somebody's seen it. So, you know, try to find a good balance. Also, you know, videos take more time. So
yeah,
hopefully that helps.
And
more questions like that. That was really good.
Yeah, and if you can get really good video quality, then you could always have a picture to start with, and then it could swipe over to a video that further, you know, the picture gives some context to the video.
Yep.
Which is great. You know,
video is another thing that this is where, again, partnering to develop a brand can help, because from a video standpoint, maybe you don't want to be taking and producing your own videos, but maybe, like for example, NAFA has Real Wealthcast, which has videos as a part of its library that you can use, pre-produced, packaged, whatever, other experts talking really cool stuff that can flow through your social media, right? So maybe the starting point to use videos to your advantage is to not produce them yourself, but to take advantage of ones that have already been done. I'll mention another cool thing out there. There's several, whether they're apps, websites, or kind of businesses out there that'll produce kind of art like whiteboard drawings and stuff like that. One's called Doodly. I think one is called Sketchpad. So there's a couple where you can actually turn script or written something that you've written, and even kind of an audio file, into a video. So there are some really cool apps, websites, and programs that, you know, if you have some good audio content, or even a written piece of, you know, material, that you may be able to turn that into some kind of a video easily without you doing the video work. So lots of cool ways that you can consider that. What other questions? All right. Since I see we're all shy, and that's fine, I'll leave you with kind of a couple last kind of cool LinkedIn tips and tricks. Um, LinkedIn's really cool to become somebody else's champion. And so if you happen to have a lot of connections on LinkedIn, what you can start to do is actually reach out within your community and say, hey, I'm trying to be better at highlighting my connections. How can I promote your fill in the blank, product, service, practice, etc.? So like I said, a great way to develop your own reputation is to do good things for other people. And LinkedIn can make that easy. So maybe you have a select group of people that, are maybe great targets, but you haven't yet, linked up and done that business thing. Well, rather than kind of approaching them in, strategic ways to get them to want to do business with you, why don't you just offer to be a better promoter of their own business? You'd be surprised how meaningful that is, and all the psychological things that you're actually doing to encourage them to want to do business with you. Because once you do somebody a favor, they are naturally inclined to want to return the favor. It's called the psychological principle of reciprocity. So there's a lot of ways that you can be a promoter of others online that has big value back to yourself. So that's kind of my last parting tip from a digital medium standpoint that has a lot of value that I got to tell you, most people don't do and don't even think to do.
All right. Well, thanks again, Brian. Thank you for your time, and thanks everybody for joining us today. If you do have any follow-up questions, you get off this webinar and you think, man, I should have asked that, feel free to reach out to Brian directly using one of these lovely contact infos that he's provided for us, or reach out to me at recruitment@nafa.org, and I'll be happy to pass it along to him. If you need anything else from me, if it's recordings or questions about the certificate, again, you can feel free to reach out to me. And I hope everyone has a great week.
Thanks, team. Have a great one.
Thanks, you too. Bye.